Do the second stage LOX load process here. There are 20 Starlink satellites on board, each clocking in at about 1,760 pounds, or about 800 kilograms. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon hull thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. They were built in Redmond, Washington, near Seattle. They'll be deployed at about 180 miles or about 290 kilometers in altitude at a 53-degree inclination. Here's an image from HO Robotics capturing a view of a Starlink satellite from one of their satellites on orbit, claiming to be the first to get direct digital eyes, if you will, on an on-orbit Starlink satellite, and published this image from last year. Booster tail number 1063 in the SpaceX fleet. Well, we've got a little bit of time here. Let's go ahead and step back in time and walk through the history of this booster as we prepare to see it take flight for an 18th time. Its debut came back on November 21st, 2020. Launched the radar altimeter satellite known as Sentinel-6 Michael Frelick. This was the first of a pair of satellites designed to measure sea level change. It was named for the former director of NASA's Earth Science Division. Second mission came on May 26, 2021, when this booster launched 60 version 1 Starlink satellites on the Starlink L-26 mission, or excuse me, L-28 mission. This was the only time that this booster launched from the East Coast. It has now been out west for the rest of its life. Third flight came on November 24th, 2021, launching NASA's DART mission, the Double Asteroid Redirection Test mission. It was a planetary defense operation to see if NASA could alter the orbit of an asteroid. And it turns out we can. Next 6 launches from this booster was supporting the launch of Starlink satellites. Those are Group 4-11 on February 25th, 2022, 4-13 on May 14th, 3-1 on July 11th, 3-4 on August 31st, 4-31 on October 28th, 2-5 on February 17th of 2023. The booster's 10th flight came on April 15th of last year. It was for the Transporter 7 rideshare mission, where 51 satellites were launched to low Earth orbit for a host of customers. Flight number 11 came on May 20th and was another rideshare mission. This was a combination of 5 satellites for Iridium's constellation and 16 satellites for communication company OneWeb. Those satellites, of course, built right here on Merritt Island, the Airbus OneWeb satellite facility. In addition to launching 15 satellites for OneWeb's original constellation, there was also the so-called JoeySat. This is a prototype for OneWeb's second-generation constellation. 12th launch came on July 7th. That was the Starlink 5-13 mission, sending up another 48 satellites. The booster then launched the Tranche 0 mission for the U.S. Space Development Agency. On board were 10 transport satellites from Lockheed Martin, 1 transport satellite from York Space Systems, and 2 tracking satellites from SpaceX themselves. This is part of the Space Development Agency's so-called proliferated warfighter space architecture. After that, it has been Starlink City for this particular booster. It's 7-4 on October 9th, 7-7 on November 20th, 7-11 on January 24th of this year, and most recently 7-17 on March 11th. And as you heard, SpaceX is preparing for the strong back retract sequence to begin. We're just a handful of minutes away from the launch of this particular Falcon 9 rocket.
Strong back retract.
And while fortunately the fog is not obscuring the views of the rocket from the pad level, you can see there's quite a bit of cloud around the area and both above and a little bit lower to ground level. So for our friends in the Southern California or perhaps Utah or Arizona areas. We'll see how well you're able to see this one. Love to see some pictures, though, if you were able to snap some. You can see the transporter erector leaning back away from the Falcon 9 rocket through some of the vapor there. Now just about 3 minutes away from liftoff. Next call out we're expecting is first.
Complete.
There we go. Coming up next will be second stage LOX load complete at about T-minus 2 minutes, at which point the Falcon 9 will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that call out, SpaceX is now fully fueled and just about ready to launch in a minute and a half. As we come into the last 90 seconds of the countdown, I want to thank the more than 15,000 of you that are joining with us live. And if you haven't already, if you could give this video a like, that would be great. Allow some more folks to find their way in as we're approaching liftoff just about a minute from now. Also want to quickly thank a few folks in the live chat. Thanks to William Sassano for joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Thank you, William. Also to Artemis, one of our channel members, for gifting 20 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that generosity, Artemis. And lastly, for now, Cappy Cross for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Appreciate the both of you. Next call we're expecting is SpaceX launch director to give that go for launch right on cue.
T-minus 30 seconds.
And with everything in motion for a liftoff in less than 30 seconds now, we're going to go ahead and step back, listen to the final countdown from SpaceX, and we'll chat with you on the other side of liftoff.
T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff Falcon 9. Go Starlink. Go SpaceX. Vehicle is pitching downrange. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
No. A little more than a minute into flight so far, all moving nominally, and
Max
some
Q.
great tracking views on this mission. As you heard, the vehicles pass through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the rocket. Coming up, we're expecting a few different events in fairly rapid succession. First will be first stage main engine cutoff at about 2 minutes and 25 seconds to flight. That'll be followed
Vandenberg
4
fuel has
seconds
started.
later by stage separation. Then second stage engine cutoff at T plus 2 minutes and 36 seconds, followed by fairing deployment just a little after the 3-minute mark. That call out you just heard from SpaceX, they are thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine in preparation for the start of its burn. Some great views from the onboard camera here of the Falcon 9 rocket.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
All good callouts and some great visuals continuing here from the upper and lower stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. You can see those grid fins deploying to provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9's first stage.
Both stages are on nominal trajectories.
Fairing separation confirmed.
You see the Starlink satellites exposed to the vacuum of space now for the first time in this mission. We're now coming up on 4.5 minutes into the mission so far. The next milestone we're anticipating is at T plus 6 minutes and 4 seconds when the first stage entry burn will begin. See the Falcon 9's first stage has passed its apogee and is starting to make its descent back now down toward the drone ship. Of course, I Still Love You, waiting for it out in the Pacific Ocean. Those bursts you're seeing are the cold gas thrusters, which help adjust the attitude of the vehicle. You can see with all the cloud cover there beneath both of the rocket halves. May not have been the most picturesque day for folks beyond the launch pad, but hopefully, as we saw with some of the SpaceX tracking views, there were some pockets where it weaved in and out of the cloud layers. So hopefully our friends on the ground got some decent eyes on the rocket. We're now less than 30 seconds away from the start of that entry burn beginning.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
There goes the start of that entry burn. Should last about 25 seconds.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Stage 1 trajectory nominal.
Stage 1 FTS has safed.
You can see the speedometer continuing to drop rapidly on the Falcon 9's first stage as it prepares for the start of its landing burn, which is coming up now less than a minute away. Set to touchdown on the drone ship. Of course, I still love you at about T plus 8 minutes and 21 seconds. This will be the 90th booster landing on that drone ship.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
Stage 1 transonic.
Falcon 9 first stage now traveling below the speed of sound, and meanwhile on the second stage, noting that the flight termination system, or the FTS, has been safed, no longer needed at this stage of the flight. As the burn of the upper stage engine continues nominally. They're continuing to toggle back and forth on the two sides of the upper stage camera just to make sure that that Merlin vacuum engine is continuing to burn as expected.
Stage 1 landing burn. Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And for an 18th time, we have a good landing of this particular Falcon 9 first stage booster. Tail number 1063.
Nominal parking orbit.
Stats as they currently stand, now that we have a good liftoff and landing of the Falcon 9 first stage booster, tail number 1063. This was its 18th flight, of course, as previously mentioned. This was SpaceX's 335th Falcon 9 launch to date, and its 50th so far this year. Combined with the so far one integrated flight test of its Starship rocket, SpaceX has launched 51 times so far, 2024. This is the 115th orbital launch for SpaceX within the last 365 days. This was their 77th total launch from Space Launch Complex 4 East, or SLIC 4E, and the 145th overall orbital launch from this pad to date. This was also the 16th orbital launch from Vandenberg so far this year. Moving on to some recovery stats. As I mentioned, this is the 90th landing on the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. The 240th SpaceX drone ship landing so far, and their 308th booster landing to date. Finally, moving on to some industry stats. This was the 16th orbital launch from California, the 53rd orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 57th from a U.S. rocket company, and the 92nd from around the globe. Taking a look at the pie chart view of all this, there was a partial launch failure from China earlier in the year and one total launch failure from Japan. So this is where our pie chart stands. US holding at 60%. China, quarter of the pie at 25%. Japan launched 3 times this year. Russia 6. India and Iran at 2 apiece. And as we wind things down, of course, you may have noticed by now that United Launch Alliance, Boeing, and NASA have pivoted the launch target date for the Starliner Crew Flight Test CFT, sending NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams up to the International Space Station. It was tentatively set for the 17th, coming up on this Friday. It has now been adjusted to a launch date of no earlier than a week from today, Tuesday, May 21st. We'll have more for you to read up on that on our website, spaceflightnow.com. We also have a video explainer in works. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel here, turn on all notifications so that way you get alerted when that video goes live. And of course, whenever we start another one of these live streams for a launch.